Hey there, it's meteorologist Jamie Singleton. It is Friday evening, and we are looking at some heavy storms over the area. Now, the concern is for these things to flare up in a real quick hurry and produce some wind damage like we had yesterday across Franklin County and other parts of the area in a real quick hurry. They're called pulse type storms. They don't have a lot of wind shear. There's not a lot of spin and organization to these. These are just flaring up in a very moist atmosphere. You can feel it outside today. There's plenty of cape or energy for these to feed off of, and they're producing a lot of lightning and some very heavy rainfall. So the concern into the evening for the evening commute and into the beginning of the overnight will be for these things to be moving through. Isolated wind damage could be a big problem in some of these storms, but we could also see some isolated flash flooding concerns, and a flash flood watch remains in effect for most of the area with the exception of Southside into tonight because of all these storms that are going across the area, and they're not moving that much because there's not much wind shear to move these things along. So they just kind of crawl until they reach the mid levels of the atmosphere, and that's when they begin to move along. Now, this one severe storm earlier that was in Botetourt County, now moving into northern Bedford County, is still packing quite a punch. The warning just expired, but this could be reissued here pretty soon. There's a lot of lightning east of Buchanan. Montvale got hit again, and that's in northern Bedford County. So I know in Big Island you can probably hear the thunder. Also, Glasgow's been hit hard the past couple of days. They got hit again. More storms up toward Lexington and Buena Vista. Right now, it's just moderate rain behind the bigger cell right now, which is now moving to the northeast into Amherst. So these things have been in the mountains all day today. And again, they've been crawling along, so they've been producing a lot of heavy, isolated rainfall. Now they're starting to move east of the mountains. So places that haven't seen storms today are going to start to see storms over the next couple of hours. You can see in Bedford County here, if we move into Bedford itself, there's nothing going on. But if you look to the north of Bedford, I bet you got a very dark sky and quite a lightning show just to the north of Good and Bedford and Forest. So this area from Lynchburg north into Amherst and Bedford will probably be hit within the next hour or two as these things crawl along. And keep in mind, if you're traveling like 460 through here on your way back from work or whatever, if you got some evening errands to do, you may encounter some flooded roadways. And we want to remind you that this rain's coming down really heavy in places where it may not be where you're at. So you may be riding along and everything's fine, and then you get up in a thunderstorm or near where a thunderstorm's been raining for the past hour, and all of a sudden the water's rushing across the road. That's the concern for the evening hours. So anywhere you see the red, that's just some very heavy rainfall, and the orange as well on this particular color palette. Roanoke City right now, if you zoom in toward the Vinton area, we're going to do street level here. Looks like if you 581's dry, but if you head along 460 here, coming through East Roanoke into Roanoke County here into Botetourt County, you'd run into some heavier storm activity near the Vinton area on 24, heading down Elm here. And then as you go into Franklin County, we've got a flood advisory out, because what happens in Franklin County too is sometimes these storms will find a mountain ridge. That's where the heat comes across the slopes, and they hug the mountain ridges, and so the root of the storm remains anchored near the mountains, and the upper level winds blow the top off of it. And what's happening is just that. You can see we've got Cahays Mountain here, and here's the Blue Ridge Parkway radar sites right there where you see that cone of silence. But this particular thunderstorm doesn't have a lot of lightning with it now, but we're continuing to see moderate to heavy rainfall between Boone's Mill and Ferrum, and mainly between Boone's Mill and Callaway. That right now is across Cahays Mountain. This is starting to now move. It'll be interesting to see if it merges with this cell in East Roanoke toward the Hardy area of Franklin County. But we've got some lighter rain and some cloud cover around Westlake as well. Don't want to forget the mountainous areas. We've got thunderstorm activity and shower activity, locally heavy at times, up and down I-77 from Wytheville down to Galax and Hillsville, near Pulaski as well. And there's yet more activity here across the Mountain Empire from Saltville and the Marion. You can see northwest North Carolina is not left out today with heavier storms in southern Wilkes County. So this is going to be the story for the remainder of the afternoon and the evening. Now as we're moving into the evening hours. This is why, if you look at the jet stream here, by the way, this is Tropical Storm Cristobal here down to the south near the Yucatan here. It's been sitting here. It's going to go north very gradually, I think, as we go into the weekend and into next week. So I'm not going to worry too much about it, although it looks very ominous here. It has a large moisture shield associated with it. And really, you've got a big area of high pressure here across Texas. You've got another almost Bermuda high here across the western Atlantic. And the area of weakness where we see the dipping of the jet stream is down across our area. Now, if you go up to the north, this is where the jet stream's actually moving faster. So all these storms are moving along. But down to the south here across our area, we've got this little trough. It's been sitting in here for the past couple of days. That's why we had the storms yesterday. And the front that's underneath it is not being moved along all that much. So if I put this in motion, you're going to see this trough just kind of sit here with the thunderstorms just, developing along the mountains pretty much throughout each afternoon and evening, including this evening. Pretty neat outflow here, stabilizing the air south of Memphis. This is a complex of storms here. You can see it there going through central Georgia and Augusta and the upstate of South Carolina. Not much severe weather with it unless you go back across the Memphis area and into northern Mississippi. But, that's pretty neat to see because behind it you don't see a lot of those little dotty clouds. It's basically a thunderstorm's goal is to stabilize the atmosphere. It's nature's natural air conditioner. And so that's what it's doing here across the south. We're in a different air mass, so to speak, if you look at it on a local level. And you can see those showers and storms continuing. So I'm just kind of going through my different programs here to show you what's going on. We'll take a look at the lightning. And this will pop, as lightning data comes in, it'll pop up live there for you on your screen. There's not a lot of it. There's been quite a bunch of it here. If I put it into motion, you can see that one severe thunderstorm warning around Buchanan and Blue Ridge. You were hit hard. Had some hail in Blue Ridge yesterday. That's now, again, moving closer into the Glasgow area, just under severe limits. And we've also got that heavier cell that's been just sitting here. And you can see how slowly these things are moving along. This is over the past 30 minutes. Let me see if I can get an hour loop up here. And we'll widen the picture for you. And you can see the storms now nearing the Charlottesville area. So all up and down the I-81 corridor, it's a rainy commute with the heavier cells now just east of the interstate. But we're seeing more activity flare up here to the west, and the idea is we will continue to see that throughout the evening. So any, flash flood watches could become warnings in a few locations where we see the heavier rainfall. This is, again, why I've got my nerdy weather computer up here. This is Simon AWIPS. But anyway, you can see a mid-level trough. These are the winds. And this is the satellite superimposed underneath it. Very light winds. I mean, I'm looking at 10 to 15 mile per hour winds, maybe up to 20 mile per hour. And that's all the way up at 10,000 feet. So there's not a lot of push to these storms. And that's the concern because it is very moist and unstable beneath that. What you're essentially looking at are 5 different things on the screen at once. But if you look up here, right here, this is the amount of instability. That's the CAPE. It's around 2,000. I'll show you that again closer here in just a second. This is wind shear. There's actually a fair amount of directional shear. Our winds are out of the south, very light, and our winds, again, are fairly light, but a little bit stronger and out of the west as you go up in the atmosphere. So there's a little bit of spin that we may have to watch for, but there's not a lot of speed to this directional shear. So that kind of offsets it some. But if you look a little bit below here, you can see this is what we call a theta E ridge. Down here in the orange, that is where you combine temperature and moisture, and you bring that air parcel all the way up and then all the way back down again. And that tends to be an area that's ripe when you get an air mass like this for thunderstorm development. And then you have your lift. You can barely see it here, but at the bottom of the screen where I'm moving my mouse just to the right of my head here, that's the trough here at 700 millibars, and this is the yellow area is the most relative humidity. It tends to be where the storms are focused a little bit more. As I watch this, we're still getting some cloud to ground lightning strikes. We're still getting some lightning data here coming out east of Buchanan. That's the strongest storm I see near in the Glasgow area in Amherst County as well, northern Bedford County, and we'll see what happens down here around Rocky Mount. Right now it's just a passing shower, but there's some potential for more of that as we go into the afternoon. As I mentioned, if you look at the SPC meso analysis, there's not a lot of wind shear here. But that's the problem. There's a lot of moisture in the mid-levels, and then if you get down to the surface, there's a ton of moisture available at the surface. I know that's confusing to look at, but just know there's a lot of moisture to work with. And if you look at the amount of water in the air, we're up around 1.7 to 1.8 inches of precipitable water. That gives you an idea these storms can dump a lot of rain, and these arrows are vectors. So the shorter the arrow, the less wind speed we have to move that moisture along. So when a storm develops like this, it can blossom up really quickly, but the downdraft of that rain will cut the storm's inflow off, and so it'll cycle pretty fast. And that's why we're seeing warnings are coming out and then they're going away. So I jumped on to tell you about the Botetourt County storm that had a warning with it. You can see all the lightning history with it. It looks like it hit Fincastle and moved just north of Blue Ridge, in between Blue Ridge and Buchanan, near Lithia here. And then as we go into Kelso Mill and Curtis, south of Rocky Point here in Rockbridge County, and just north of Bedford here, that's the strongest storm. Still watching Shady Grove and Chandlersburg. This cell here looks pretty interesting to me, and this is where the aerial flood advisory is in effect. Let me show you. Let's see, that's in Franklin County and east central Floyd County. It has stopped raining there for the most part, but the flood advisory continues until 7:30. I got to tell you, they're pretty accurate on, they can compute how much that runoff is going to be and how long it's going to be, causing issues out there. So they've got it up for another 2 hours or so. This was issued at 4:34, so almost an hour ago. So it'll take some time for some of that water to run off. It's been sitting there over western Franklin County for a while, and now it's weakening around Dillon's Mill. Doesn't say, I believe that storm is probably moving to the northeast at about 15 miles per hour. So anyway, that's a look at what's going on. Isolated flash flooding. A lot of lightning in some of these storms nearing the Lynchburg-Amherst area. This is the area to watch here, I think north of Lynchburg, and also in the Bedford County. It looks like this cell, as I've been talking to you, has been getting a bit heavier east of Roanoke City. So along 460, that's a tough go. That's some white knuckle driving and some of the heavier rain as you near the Bedford area. I have more updates as we go through the evening. I'll be at the Harvester later on tonight, but any warnings will auto post. And I'll let you know here on the video end if we need to tell you about any flash flooding concerns. But stay weather aware for the next several hours.